Bill Walsh completely changed the NFL with his West Coast offense, but in order to understand how he had so much impact in the NFL, we have to go back to his very beginning and tell the tale of history about how he came up with the West Coast offense. In 1957, Bill Walsh takes over as the head coach at Washington High School in Fremont, California. And this team that he's taking over is bad. They haven't won a league game in 3 years, so Bill Walsh has a lot of building to do. Now, in Coach Walsh's first year, his starting quarterback, Hero Coratori, great athlete, but he ends up going down with a collarbone injury. And then Bob Hidalgo needs to take over as the backup quarterback. Now, this is a significant part of the story because it forces Walsh to innovate his offense around his new player. And every great coach should do that. They should take what they have and innovate it around what quarterback and receivers, running backs that they have in order to be successful. And this is exactly what Walsh did, and it's exactly what he does later in the story here when he's at Cincinnati. But this is the foundation of Coach Bill Walsh and how he was able to adapt to his new systems. Now, Walsh has some success in 1958. He ends up winning a league title. And then 1959, he ends up going out to Berkeley under Marv Levy and working for him. But in 1959, Walsh actually leaves the high school rankings to get into the college rankings, and then eventually will end up in the Raiders in 1966 as an offensive assistant. 2 years later, after joining the Raiders in 1966, he ends up joining the Cincinnati Bengals and Paul Brown in 1968, and this is where we can see the West Coast offense start to formulate and come together. Now, when Walsh joined Cincinnati, the quarterback that he has is this guy named Greg Cook. Now, Greg Cook is 6'4", 220 pounds, and coach actually called him Steve Young, but just a bigger body. So he could move, he could throw, he could do everything you need from an NFL quarterback to do. But unfortunately, like he saw in high school, Greg ended up getting hurt, ended up tearing up his rotator cuff. So coach had to adapt, again, like he did in high school, and he brought in his backup, Virgil Carter. Now, for those who know and have seen Virgil Carter play, he didn't have the biggest arm, but he was super athletic, and he was very accurate with his passes. And this is where the term nickel and diamond came from, that's often associated with West Coast offense and Bill Walsh's offense in particular, is because of the short throws to the running back and short throws to the tight end that came out rather quickly. And because of the lack of arm strength from Virgil Carter, this is where we start to see the horizontal passing a game start to formulate that the West Coast offense is famous for, and not so much the vertical stretch that Coach Walsh was able to do with Greg Cook, who had a bigger arm.
Here. So we don't want the ball in the air very long. People don't practice against it very well. And we can get different kind of patterns we can develop in close to other people that just aren't there for you when that guy split way out.
But the whole basis of the West Coast offense is high percentage throws and get your athletes in space and get them running after the catch. And this is why receivers like Jerry Rice, Roger Craig, all those guys were so successful, because they were able to get the football and they were able to run after the catch.
I really think the West Coast offense is a very specific, sequential approach to football. The essence of it is a ball control passing game combined with a complete, fully dimensional running game.
Another staple in the West Coast offense is just the rhythmic timing of the quarterback's footwork, as well as where the receiver is going to be in relation to what coverage the defense is playing. So Bill Walsh could famously tell you what route was going to be open, when it was going to be open, if the quarterback just had the proper footwork. So that's why when you dig through the offensive playbook from the 49ers, you'll see 5 steps and throw, 5 steps in the hitch, 7-step drop, 7-step in a hitch. Everything was timed out perfectly, so by the time the receiver hit a certain area of the field against a certain coverage, the quarterback could then put his foot in the ground and deliver the football. So if you ever watch Joe Montana, he knows exactly when the ball is going to be thrown based on the coverage the defense is giving them, and of course the rhythmic timing of the footwork. Now, during this time with the Cincinnati Bengals, it was a huge growth opportunity for Bill Walsh because he coached under one of the most innovative coaches that we've seen in football under Paul Brown. This is where he learned to watch film, practice situational football, and of course what he's most famous for is scripting plays. Now, Joe Montana famously said that it started with right around 10 plays when he got to the 49ers, and then ended up being around 20 to 25 plays that Bill Walsh would script before the game, meaning he could tell you what play he was going to call, what defense they were probably going to line up in, and how that play call would work. You see colleges, NFL teams all the time, they usually script the first 10 plays because they're going to see what the defense is going to be running, how they're going to react to certain sets, certain motions, and certain formations. So a lot of teams will script the first 10 plays, but Walsh would script the first 20 to 25 plays. So now back to the story. In 1975, Paul Brown decides that he's going to retire, but instead of promoting Bill Walsh, he promotes another assistant to head coach. Bill Walsh ends up leaving the same time that Paul Brown did. He does a short stint with the San Diego Chargers. He does a short stint at Stanford where he brings them back to a winning record. And then right around that time, the NFL team that's right in their backyard, the San Francisco 49ers, calls and asks them to revive their program because San Francisco did struggle for a little bit. And this is where the 49ers actually start to take life because Coach Walsh takes his system that he's been developing over the years, this West Coast system, and implements it with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks with Joe Montana and Steve Young. Okay, now we're going to do a deep dive into the San Francisco playbook. That way you can see what's going on behind the curtains and see formationally, passing-wise, running-wise, what the West Coast offense was trying to do and what Bill Walsh was ultimately trying to accomplish. So first thing I want to look at is just a couple base formations. You're going to notice that in most of Bill Walsh's formations, he's going to have a 2-back set, whether that be lined up in split backs, what you're seeing right here, or in an I formation, which you can see with these dotted lines, or offset, which you can see with the F and the H, offset, which coach calls ace. But you're going to see a variation of 2 different backs that are in the backfield. Now, Bill Walsh says that he wants to run the ball first. And I know when people think of the West Coast offense, they think of that horizontal passing attack, intermediate to shallow passes. But he wanted to run the ball first, and everything was set up off of play action. If you notice here on the left-hand side that there are a ton of combinations of play action that coach is trying to accomplish here. And this is what you're seeing here is the quarterback had to know where he was protected in each protection. So nowadays in the NFL, coaches might just have a half slide or a full slide or a dual read protection. They'll have 4 to 5 different, maybe more protections, but you can see here on the screen, there's close to 9. There's another page of this as well. So close to 15 protections that he had. And this is all based off of the flow, the formation, and what they were trying to accomplish when the quarterback dropped back to pass. And we mentioned too about the footwork and why it's so important. If you see here, all of these pass protections is tied to the quarterback's footwork. So if he is taking that 5-step drop, he has to know where he's protected and where he's left vulnerable. So if you look here at 72, 73, you'll see that the Y is in the protection, but if he gets beat to the outside, there's no running back to save him. So the quarterback has to know that if he's doing a play action or drop back and looking to his left, that if that tight end, who's technically not a great blocker, as they are pass catchers, might get beat to the right side, so he's got to get that ball out quick if he does feel pressure. Next, we're going to look at the passing attack and how everything was layered from first read, second read to third read / check down. And this is what Bill Walsh is most famous for, is his ability to layer the defense horizontally, okay? He wanted to stretch you out, that way he can throw the football and make it easy for the quarterback. So, first we'll look at this play right here in the top left-hand corner. If you notice the 3 reads, 1 is the go ball, 2 is the flat route to the running back, and then 3 is this third here. So the quarterback can look deep to outside to back to inside and get rid of the football. If we're looking in the top right here, this page, you'll see 1's the curl ball, 2 is the out route by this player, and then 3 is going to be the flat route by the fullback coming out of the backfield. So the quarterback doesn't need to look left, doesn't need to scan the entire field. He has to look right, find the read, and then deliver the football. So it was easier to process for the quarterback, of course tied to the footwork of taking a 3-step in a hitch and letting the ball go, 5-step in the hitch, letting the ball go, whatever was tied to this certain play. This isn't to say that Bill Walsh didn't take his shots downfield. You can see here in the top right-hand corner, his number 1 read is going to be that shot ball in the top left, and then if it's not there, he's going to come back to 2, 3, and then get rid of the ball for his check down read. So again, it is a horizontal passing attack, but you do see guys like Jerry Rice get through the middle of the field and the ball be delivered on time if the quarterback does decide to go there. And the last thing that we wanted to look at was just the route tree and how Coach Walsh coached up his X and Z receivers, meaning the most outside receivers, and the different routes that they were going to run. So a typical route tree in high school or college is going to be 1 through 9, and the coach will have variations off it. But here you can see that there's a ton of routes that break off of this route tree, and you can see in the bottom right corner they're all layered by steps too and how many yards. So Coach Walsh didn't want his guys pushing it past any certain points. Everything was choreographed to be beautifully thrown at a very particular point at every yardage, and even the step being calculated to time up with the quarterback's footwork and when the ball should be released. All right, the last thing we have to talk about if we're talking about the West Coast is the verbiage of the actual play call. It is a mile long, and the reason why coaches do this is because they can take out and tag every piece of the play That way you can turn one play into multiple plays just by removing a phrase and adding a phrase, right? And Chris Sims and John Gruden are famous. If you go and type those names into YouTube, you'll find a famous video where John Gruden tells him, hey, we're going green right X, shift to Viper right, 382 X stick looky on 1. And Chris Sims has trouble processing all that because for a newer quarterback, if you're not in the system, it is a lot to process. But we're going to break down one of the play calls here just to show you exactly what each piece means and why coaches tag it so long. So the example play call that we have here is strong right slot, Z right, spider 2, Y banana, Z over. Now, what does all of this mean? So strong right slot is actually the formation that we're seeing here. Z right just simply tells the Z receiver you're going to go in motion to the right side. That's pretty simple. Spider 2, Y banana is the concept that they're actually running out of the backfield. So you see the B back going into the flat, the Y running the banana route, and then the Z running the over route in the backside. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, what does the X receiver do? Typically teams will have built-in rules where if they're on the backside of a route, they're going to run a drag, a dig, or a backside skinny post, whatever it may be. But they have rules built into, if I'm not in the initial concept, I have to do this other thing here. But that's how typically the West Coast play call structure, with the formation, the protection, the motions, the shifts, and then each individual route that's tagged on the back end. So that's the West Coast offense. To learn about more offenses, we recommend you check out this video here, which goes over all of the offenses that we've covered on this channel.